The following is a transcript between Matías De Stefano, referred to as me, and his higher self, referred to as I am, originally produced on December 9th, 2020, under the constellation of Sagittarius, in the mental week, examining through the knee chakra. Me. I heard today that a solar flare is approaching Earth, and it will collapse with our magnetic field throughout today, December 9th. A perfect caress from the sun to the earth before the eclipse, which will cause technological failures throughout the planet in the electrical network, telecommunications, satellites, and that obviously will also alter the internal connections between people. Also, I read that the electromagnetic discharge will reveal the northern lights as far as the northern states of the United States. The flare will surely hit the South American continent, preparing it for the frequency rise for the subsequent eclipse. We are being prepared. I am. This is a month of reconnection, and that is why we are being prepared. This storm will bring today the necessary frequencies for such a transformation. The sun reconfiguring the Earth's magnetic field, the great spider web, to weave something new. Thus, on December 14th, during the eclipse, a period of great responsibility will begin. The key is the next 6 months. They will be the effort to fulfill the role that corresponds to each of us. It is time to be practical. But in turn, this new moon tells us that this effort is for common service, and the Piscean nature with sensitivity and networking and teamwork. To this, we must add the conjunction Jupiter with King and purpose, and Saturn, earth and karma, representing the moment of facing all of the karma of human purpose. Me, that is to announce the birth of Christ. I am, and so it is again. This is the announcement of a birth. Both planets will be in grade 0 of Aquarius, and after having spent 200 years going through Earth signs, this December 21st, they began to go through 200 years of air signs. Me, and what does this mean? I am, that at last, my friend, this December 25th, you will be able to say that you have crossed the threshold into the age of Aquarius. Me, many thought that this era had already begun a long time ago. I am. What had begun is the transition. 200 years ago, we began to approach the threshold of the door between Pisces and Aquarius. 200 years ago, we began to feel a fresh air coming from behind the portal after spending so much time breathing with humanity inside. Since 2012, we have placed ourselves under the threshold, and the eclipse of the 14th will be the exit of it. This effect will last 6 more months, but on December 21st, we will have put a finger outside, and the fresh air we will begin to feel. But, as always, when there is a change in pressure between two climates, one closed and humid, with fresh air and dry air, an air current is produced that can be swirled and generate chaos and instability. So, until we adjust to the new air time, we can feel off-axis. Nevertheless, inevitably, we will have started the 200 years of air before fully beginning the age of Aquarius. And we will do it in a new moon, which represents the beginning, the sowing of the new. Me, sowing a new humanity, the motif of the Arsayian foundation. I am, and planting begins then. Me, wow. That's why my future self told me that this month I had to reconfigure myself to start over in a new time, correcting my mistakes, going from am I to I am. I am. When you pass the portal, the next 200 years, the new information will descend to the earth nodes, a fresh air of new currents, ideas, thoughts, freedoms, revolutions. And for this reason, they must sow the seeds, and above all, create the furrows through which the water that irrigates them can flow. Me, and what would they be? I am the planetary network. Each node is a set of different vibrations that, folded into frequencies, create knots of time and space. A new air that will make the knots untie, become more flexible, since the frequencies change, and this releases tensions of time to rebuild, reweave the space. Therefore, when this happens, for the process to be harmonious, all those nodes must be in tune, united. A nodal communion, what in Latin you call connexus, a set of knots in a fabric, that is, connection. The word nexus gives rise to the verb nectar, which gives rise to the term knot, link, or in English words, to knit, net, needle. The connection is something that sometimes I think we don't quite understand, because we usually talk about the connections as if they were something external to us, as if it did not depend on us. But in reality, it is something that depends directly on us, on our ability to connect the dots to make ties. But above all, we use it to talk about higher things like connecting with the spirit or transcendental things. But today, it is the knees day, so how would you explain it? Connection is the ability to bring things together. The universe himself expresses himself from the internal to the external, creating 2 points of view. The observation of one and the other is what we would call connection, since it implies a reciprocal communication between both points. The greater the multiplication, that is, the greater the doubling of this polarity, the more visions arise. This is how vibration gives rise to space and frequency gives rise to time. Both are the same in a different order, and the more they bend, the more realities they create. This distorts the structure, generating a kind of coil-shaped spiral twisted together. Like DNA strands. Exactly. It is produced by the intercommunication of electrons, which are positioned in a comfortable way to save energy. Thus, the greater the amount of information by doubling, a space-time fabric arises that we call network. Due to polarity, these fabrics replicate, imitating each other. Like RNA, separating from DNA to produce new sequences, generating cell division. Thus by molecular multiplication or meiosis or by mitosis, inorganic organisms expand first and organic organisms later, respectively. Thus, each fabric becomes unique and original, being its own fabric that we call nexus, or in Spanish, nudo. The time-space knots give rise to what we consider nodes. Nodal points are the interaction of more than one piece of information. Now, beyond this differentiation, each node is connected to the others by resonance. When the frequency is low, the tissue contracts, putting pressure on itself and creating strong ties that are difficult to break and unite, which end up becoming a pattern or a belief. But if the frequency is high, the loops expand, like particles in an atom when the temperature rises. Wow, wait. I just saw something clearly. So everything that exists in the universe is replicated tissues of vibration and frequency that are interpreted as space and times, which due to distortion and low vibration form rigid and closed nodes contracting on themselves. And when we raise the vibration, they expand and can be molded. In other words, this is the key for which we are asking to raise the frequency, vibrate higher, work with our history. That is, it goes beyond spiritual concepts. It is systemic. It is almost like an electrician. because the more we raise our vibration, the more the knots in the fabric of our being are relaxed. What we have woven into existence from the physical, emotional, and mental. For this reason, we can begin to see clearly our history, ties, and past lives. I am one of those. I am glad that, despite the fact that you have been doing this since you were 12 years old, you continue to surprise when you see the same thing in a different way. Now, this new information or solar RNA that will modify the Earth's DNA will only be successful if we open these chains or knots. DNA is modified thanks to solar radiation, whose intensity generates small mutations in it, dissolving and reprogramming it, changing certain patterns of its sequence. A solar storm does this on a large scale on Earth's DNA, and the 12 strands of Earth's DNA are in its 12 isododecahedron nodes. In order for them to spread, they must work on the history and paths, time and space of said nodes, like someone who removes the earth to sow a seed. Me, you mean us. I am. Therefore, before working and tilling the earth, it is necessary to work and till one's self. Each chakra, each organ is a personal node, linked to the connection of the other centers distributed in time and space. Everything that exists is connected by these strings that bend and stretch, that contract and expand. The tensions that we can receive will compress our nodes, closing the chakras. If we make them more flexible, they will begin to release information and emotions. Me, like what we're doing, recording and giving new meaning to concepts which make us get out of the closed vision or limiting emotions so that our knots begin to dissolve and allow new information to enter. I am. Consciousness is like that sun that modifies and produces mutations in the DNA of the being, in the soul, turning what was previous to survival patterns into the transcendental tool. The more flexible the opening of consciousness becomes, the more flexible the unconscious, and later, the fabrics of the subconscious, freeing you from the contracted pressure of your space-time nodes, which reveal conflicts and their origins, healing the bonds, the connections properly between the different beings to which you are linked. In this practice, the connection, the network, becomes flexible in you, and this is the great network of collective thought, making emotions flexible, which is the water that irrigates the time-spatial nodes of the earth. And so, me, it's beautiful. I am. To achieve this, you must connect with yourself. The connection is not something that you should only be practiced with other dimensions or the world outside. The first connection is with your own network, in silence, observation, meditation, and recognition of your own history, of your own paths, of your own mistakes, learning, of your life in the family tree, in the history of your culture, in the memories of other lives, recognizing all those things to which you feel connected in life and existence, in identifying which are nodes in you and which are knots in you. Thus, you will recognize that you have two nodes called hands, one positive, right, and the other negative, left, and regardless of which one you use to write. And with these two nodes, you can weave and unweave your energy, your ties, like a dance or in a therapy, in a game. And that when you touch someone or something, or you silently feel the network, you will be connecting with all the common history between you and the rest. This is how you awaken memory, not by your mind, but by your magnetism, by the connection of your positive and negative, of your contemplation, since the nodes are the ends of a string that sound like an instrument, changing its harmony into function of the tension or distension that it possesses. Me, connecting to things is learning to feel them, like listening to a song within your heart, like playing an instrument with your essence, connecting time and space through the threads of vibration. If I tune up, I can tune up the world. I am. Therefore, the responsibility to transform the world lies in the responsibility you have to tune yourself. You are your own world, and when you manage to find your knots and turn them into nodes through resonance and coherence, then you freely connect to a larger network. It also makes you the world. Me, making synapses with the others, creating the grooves, where the water of emotion will not be condensed in ice, but will flow toward the rigid knots of the story, to descend them, to turn them into the nodes, and to allow the new information to nourish the DNA of the world, transforming, mutating history and the paths to come. I am geneticists of consciousness. Me, weavers of time. I am. The great spider calls you all to his web. It is time to resignate and reweave history.